When you want to start researching how to move, what are the requirements, there's so much information out there, right? And it's radically different what you find, right?
Oh yeah, there's always some story of a guy. Oh, I met one Colombian. He got an E2 visa for 15K, and then
Exactly.
everyone's like, oh, you can just invest 15K and get an E2 visa. It's like, no,
No,
there was a
exactly.
big chance he could have got denied as well with that, or that
Yeah,
was 15 years ago. Times have changed.
exactly. So it was great to have your guys' advice and support. And what you guys did for me really was establish that clarity and that almost like roadmap.
Patrick Findaro here, founding partner at Visa Franchise. Today we have special guests, E2 Visa investor, former client, Fabian Montoyo Fent. Fabian, thanks for joining today.
Happy to be here.
So you've kind of taken a circular path to the US where you left your home country of Costa Rica, which I love for all the friendly people, great surfing waves, nice microclimates,
Yeah.
all the way to Canada, where it was very different change in temperature. And then you came to the US. Can you tell us a little bit about that trajectory up Costa Rica? Was it Saskatchewan?
Yeah, absolutely.
Saskatchewan and then now Florida?
Yep. In Costa Rica, well, I was born and raised in Costa Rica, and I went to an American school there. And when it came time to go to university, I started looking around, and I was going to go to the US. And eventually I met the recruiter for University of Saskatchewan at a university fair. And long story short, I looked at it and I thought it was an interesting idea. Went through the application process for the university, and it all turned out really good. And so I decided to move to Canada, and that's where I completed university, my master's degree. And then I lived there around 12 years, and I worked there, and then decided to move down to the US.
And you got a job in finance, right? You were working in Toronto?
No, I was working for the Royal Bank of Canada in Saskatchewan. So Saskatoon, Saskatchewan was where I was living and working for them. But I ended up in a more regional role for the Royal Bank of Canada. So we worked within a region in Canada. So it was Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Northwest Ontario.
And was it mostly retail, commercial banking?
I started in retail banking as an advisor. Just moved up throughout the branch world, but then I ended up in an area called Group Advantage, which does pensions and retirement plans for companies. So we actually worked with the actual companies that are commercial clients of RBC, and then also with their employees to structure their pensions and benefits. So it was a really interesting position.
Yeah, I can see and it grooms you well for, whether you go in B2C, which you're currently focused on, or even, B2B in the future.
Yeah. Exactly.
How big was your team? Like at the peak, how many people were under you? I imagine if you're managing a few retail branches, that could easily surmount to, tens, if not hundreds of employees.
I had in the branch world, I had a team of around 24 staff in, the brick and mortar location. And we, of course, work with partners that come in and out and things like that. And then in a regional role, the advisors I worked directly with and kind of reported to me was a team of 12. And they did virtual appointments also. So they would travel, but also do virtual appointments. And that really helped. But that Group Advantage team throughout the region has a lot more people, of course, right? So we have advisors that cater to the businesses, cater to the specific clients, and we all kind of work together. So it was a big team.
And why not just continue going up the corporate ladder and, continuing to, earn more and have more benefits? Why take your stab in entrepreneurship?
So that was definitely an option, but something that I kind of started learning and realizing is, the more up and up that I climbed the corporate ladder, I had all these ideas of how things should be done. And you were always, trying to get approval, to implement these ideas and to work in a certain way. So at the end, I found myself in a position where it was less about, you get to a certain point, it was less about the climb, but now more about this is how I want to work. And that's what got me thinking, maybe I want to have my business of my own and implement my own, ideas the way I see fit. And that got me thinking a little bit more about entrepreneurship and, what that could look like.
Yeah, I could definitely resonate that. I worked at JP Morgan at a college, and I just felt that, I learned a lot, but there were a lot of times where I just felt I couldn't really make so much of an impact, and there was
Yeah.
just a lot of unnecessary red tape. And
Yeah.
then, I looked at going within finance to work at a smaller company, like maybe a hedge fund or asset manager. But I saw it as kind of like a zero sum game where you're not, necessarily, you're kind of taking jobs from other financial institutions or taking money from other financial institutions. Someone's going to win or lose. Where
Yeah.
I think entrepreneurship on the small business side, like you're creating jobs, and it's kind of a parlay into what you're doing, where the service wasn't happening before, it wasn't happening at such a large frequency, and now people are having the service happen more often, and there's more job creation, and it's a very different game than the world of finance.
Absolutely. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
Remind me, how did you learn about Visa franchise? How did you get in contact with us?
I found you guys online. I found a video on YouTube,
Nice.
and I think it had you on there, Patrick, and talking a little bit about the E2 visa. I had heard about the E2 visa, and I actually have a couple of friends that went through the process before me. But the difference and kind of where I was stuck was the friends that I knew that did it before me had their own companies already running, and they
Sure.
just relocated them, to the US. And so,
We do some of those. If you're already doing something
yep,
and you know the industry really well, it can be a great pathway in and kind
exactly.
of de-risk it. But
But
if not, yeah,
for me, I didn't know, at what point would you be eligible for a visa if you start from something from the ground, and I wasn't sure kind of what to start. So I was looking to de-risk it for myself, and what better way than a franchise, right? It's kind of a proven model, and you're going to have the support you need. But then when I found your company, it was great because then you have, a third party giving you advice on, what might work, what doesn't work, how do you set yourself up exactly for what you want to do, and so that was a real help for me as well.
and Fabian, remind me, what industries initially piqued your interest?
So initially, my first meeting with Visa franchise, I actually said, I kind of took the opposite approach. I said, I don't want to be in food service, and then I'm open to other, industries and ideas. But I remember I told Laura in the meeting something maybe to do with real estate and things like that. And she said, okay. And she went and she did her research, and she sent me quite a few, property management options. Residential cleaning was in there as well. And a couple of other more niche opportunities in the area. When I initially got the list and I saw residential cleaning, I thought, oh no. But then I gave it a chance, and I met the people at the Maids, and they were so supportive, and there was a lot more to the business than I thought, you know. So I ended up, partnering with them, and it's been great.
Yeah, what I like about residential cleaning, especially the maid system, is that you can really start generating revenue fast. The first month, second month, third month, you can start scaling up. Where I do have clients that have success with real estate property management, but it's more of a matter of years than months
Yep.
compared to the business that you're in. So it can be kind of grueling where you're getting doors and getting new tenants to sign up, and
Yeah.
it's much higher price point and commitment. Where I think getting that initial contract for residential cleaning and kind of proving your worth, it's a little easier to kind of scale up the portfolio.
100%. Yeah. That was one of the things that as I was going through the FTDs, those are things that I thought I saw in the numbers. And then, going through different validation calls and working with your team is something that, they reiterated as well. So it was nice to see, that light at the end of the tunnel, right?
Did you talk to any other E2 Visa investors? I know we have a couple now that invested in the Maids, or other just Americans running the Maids. How were those validation calls?
They're actually really good. I did 3 validation calls, and I spoke to someone that had recently completed an E2 visa and was starting up. And then I was able to speak to a larger, franchisor who had been in the Maid system for 15 years and still owns a whole state worth of franchises. So he's just quite a big operation. And I was able to talk to someone in my area as well, who was a mid-size, franchise. So I got 3 different perspectives. I got, the new to the US perspective of an investor. I also got someone in my local area talk to me a little bit more about maybe the hurdles in your local market, right? And then I spoke to someone who's, highly tenured and runs a big operation and has a bird's eye view about, what the Maids is trying to do and how you can grow a business like within the system.
For those that are maybe leaving a corporate job or aren't familiar with the industry, what does a day-to-day look like being a franchise business owner for the Maids here in Florida?
Yeah, I love the day to day. You have so much ownership of your time, which is the biggest difference in my day to day, right? I had a very specific schedule that I had at the office. And that's gone. So every day looks different. And I enjoy that. But, in a certain day, there's always things that you have to do. So always make sure, the staff is taken care of. So I like to meet up with my staff at least once a day. And it's usually in the mornings. I tell them what the route looks like, what we're getting done today. If we have new clients, I always like to drive out and meet the new clients and be able to introduce the team, connect with my clients that way. And that's something that I find the clients also value as well. They get to see who they're talking to on the phone, and it kind of reassures that they're going to get good service. And then I also devote most of my time to make sure all the leads I'm getting, you try and sell them and try to become clients, and then a little bit of marketing as well from home. It's a lot of different activities, but it definitely allows you to carve out some more time for yourself at the end of the day.
And what's your headcount looking like right now? How big's your staff?
So I have a staff of 4 people right now.
Nice.
And
it's been what, 4 months?
yeah, exactly.
5 months?
Yeah, 4 months. So it's been really good. We started off with 3 and then we added one more person. But we're really close to expanding into our second team. So in the near future,
another 4.
In the near future, yeah,
a large route.
Exactly. So in the near future, we're going to get an extra 4, a brand new car for that team, and expand that way. Yeah.
And in terms of lead generation, is this something that you kind of had to come up with yourself, or was there a clear playbook from the Maids, the franchisor?
No, the Maids has been very supportive. So they've really, done the most of the work in terms of how to find leads and what are activities that are, successful in our area. But what I found is the power of a brand is huge. And it's not something that I necessarily thought of as I was going into this. I thought, the value in the franchise was in the process, in their systems. You don't have to figure that out, right? Someone's going to teach you, which was true. But what I wasn't expecting necessarily was, the leads. And as soon as our location went live, we started getting leads just because it was called the Maids, right? And that was huge for me, right? Because at the beginning, when we opened the doors, I remember thinking, okay, who am I going to get as a client? And then they started coming in and it all kind of worked together. It was awesome.
It seems like it's definitely like a bit of an Anglo, American type where it's more, yes, individual matters, but it's more about the brand, the company, the values of the company, how long it's been established. Where in Costa Rica, or, I used to live in Brazil.
Yeah.
And it's, who essentially.
Exactly.
And
yeah,
there's benefits to that for sure, but it's hard to like really scale up fast. And it can take a lot of time, getting business through just, networking means.
Exactly. And it's not tried and true. It might work for some people really well, but it might not work for everyone, right? So
if I had to summarize it, it sounds like you spent your time training the team, recruiting team now with this new crew, closing sales, and then key customer relationships.
Exactly.
Okay, great. And then the franchisor is able to help complement a lot of the other areas. And how's it been with your fellow franchisees? And how many, more or less, how many franchisees are there in the Maids system?
Oh, we have a lot. So the Maids they've been up and running for 50 years in the States, and they have locations all throughout America and even some in Canada. And it's been awesome. When I opened my doors, I was able to meet with my direct neighbors. So I have a franchise that's more established up in the north and one that's in the south. So I was able to come here and meet them in person and get their advice and stuff as I opened. And then the Maids organizes a yearly conference where all the owners get together. And that was awesome because then you meet everyone. And I believe it's around 150 owners around there that get together. So it was a great experience. And every year it changes location. So this year we traveled to Dallas, and
Nice.
we had it there. And it was great because you get to see how everyone implements in different markets and how everyone's at a different stage, right? But we can all relate to each other in terms of, what we do every day.
And do you see like within the franchise system, there's some franchisees that are like, happy with getting a business to revenue of say 300K, then other ones that want to hit
Yeah,
1 million and 2 million and just kind of keep on growing?
absolutely. I see lots of people that are able to, through the coaching that the Maids provides and the different initiatives, they do a really good job of trying to stay ahead. And so I see lots of people that are quite invested in implementing all those ideas in their business, and those people, perform really well. And, this year, they had a top 20 franchisors, and those people are producing a lot of money, right? So it's been great for me to have that perspective of, where you can get to in this industry.
And how does it work in terms of the salary, the employees? Do you pay them like a fixed salary, or is it based on commissions? How does it work for those that aren't as familiar with the business model?
So with the business model, you pay your team members, right? And that's on an hourly basis. So what they work, you pay. And then in terms of the revenue you bring in, you pay the Maids a weekly franchising fee. So that includes, your licensing fee. That includes a portion goes to marketing, so that, things like the website really produce results for you and things like that. So you send in 6% to the Maids, and then you structure your cost structure so that then you get to keep a margin for yourself at the end of the day, right?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like for 6%, the franchisor is earning their keep with the level of support they provide you.
Yeah, yeah. You're getting a lot. And the Maids is supportive, and they reward as you go through higher levels of revenue, right? So
So they start bringing down the percentage royalty
the
if you heard
so the
certain
percentage
threshold.
the percentage stays, but you start getting rebates. So you might
Oh,
get, a marketing rebate, right? If you reach certain levels. So it effectively brings it down, right?
nice.
So it's awesome to have those milestones of places where you can get to.
Yeah, no, that's definitely motivating, I'm sure. And Fabian, walk us through for those listeners. There's a lot of people that are sitting on their couches, or
Yeah,
maybe they're watching this on their iPhones, that are thinking about moving here,
yeah.
whether, coming from Canada, all over Central South America, Europe, Asia, but they're unsure of the E2 visa process,
Hmm.
how much money you need to invest, when to actually apply for the visa. So my team tells them all day, as you know, with Laura
Yeah.
and all our colleagues. But I want to hear it from you. Like, what was the process like? What did you have to do to secure the E2 visa based on investing in the Maids franchise?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of those things, like, I can relate to that feeling because, when you want to start researching how to move, what are the requirements, there's so much information out there, right? And it's radically different what you find. Right?
Oh yeah.
So
And there's always some story of a guy. Oh, I met one Colombian. He got an E2 visa for 15K. And then
exactly.
everyone's like, oh, you can just invest 15K and get an E2 visa. It's like, no,
No,
there was a
exactly.
big chance he could have got denied as well with that. Or, that
Yeah.
was 15 years ago. Times have changed.
Exactly. So it was great to have your guys' advice and support, and what you guys did for me really was establish that clarity, right? And that almost like roadmap. Because the also thing that was the other thing that was in my head was, okay, you're gonna buy this business, but when do you apply for your visa? When do you start actually, running payroll and things like that so that you can get your visa? So I wasn't sure how to structure the whole deal. And so it was great in terms of having the advice of your team and the lawyer structure the process. So yes, you're fulfilling the requirements of the investment, but at the same time, you're also doing it in a financially smart way where you're, trying to keep costs as low as you can,
Reduce the risk.
right?
Yeah. So
Reduce
you
the
can
risk.
not buy 2 vans up front, but get the
Exactly.
business going and then commit later to the business as it scales up. And
Exactly.
since we worked together, we hired a former consulate staffer that was responsible for basically the E2 visas at a really high volume
Uh-huh.
post. So we have him on his team, on our team, in-house immigration attorney. And we still have strategic attorneys that provide the strategy and the filing support. Last year, I think we worked with like 20. So, amongst our clients and those 20 attorneys, there's volume of probably like 1,500 to 2,000 E2 visa cases. So
Wow.
we do have a fair degree of market color
Yeah,
to say, okay, yeah, you're applying in San Jose, Costa Rica. This is what it's going to be like. Oh, Canada, investment's going to be less. It's taking about this much time.
exactly.
Because at the end of the day, every consulate is a little different. Business plan, page requirements, and
Yep.
like, I remember in Canada, maybe it was during your process, like the page requirement, the length of the visa petition changed, so we had to bring the business plan down. And
Yeah. Yeah.
there's always some little thing going on where if you don't see the volume, it's hard to keep up.
Exactly. Exactly. So I would say to everyone out there, it's about, key principles and structuring yourself, correctly from the beginning, right? So make sure you kind of work your way back, right? Once you find your business or your idea, then that's where I recommend people to meet up with you guys and a lawyer, to start structuring all those pieces to get, to where you want to go. But I had a very clear roadmap. But something that surprised me was, how quick you can actually get it done. So once you're up and running, right? At the beginning, it seems daunting, right? You have to worry about your LLC, your investment, this and that, right? But once you're up and running, you can get this done really quick. Where at the end of the day, you're just waiting for your appointment, right? So that was it was a really good process for me.
Do you remember what it was like in terms of like from the time you started working with us
Mhm.
until the time you secured the E2 visa?
Yeah, I remember I had my first meeting with Laura in January, and
January 2024.
January 2024. Yeah, and then what took the longest was deciding what company to partner with. Right, the franchise selection process took the longest, and I definitely took my time with that because
Yeah,
I
I
still,
remember this. I was in the background. I check weekly. I see what
yeah,
the team's looking at. I was like, hey, what's going on with Fabian? Okay, he's looking at these
exactly.
franchises. Yeah, that's good.
Finally, I decided, okay, in I believe it was April. I decided, okay, I'm going to partner with the Maids, and then that's where it really gained steam.
I
And
think that's good. Three
yeah,
months, 4 months.
yep,
I would
and
say that's what I would recommend. I'm always cautious when clients come to us. Oh, I saw your YouTube video. I really like this franchise. Hey, hold off.
yeah,
There's 7,000 franchises in the US. Like, let's really make sure. And this is a
exactly,
big decision. You're signing a contract usually for 10 years.
right.
Let's make sure this is what you want to be doing and committing to.
And you're gonna be surprised. You have to go through the process with a couple different companies, right? And there's gonna be surprises and things you didn't expect, and that might change your assessment for the better or for the worse, right? So yeah, so about 3 to 4 months in the selection process, and then after that, it was fairly quick. After I committed and made the franchise payment, and about
So you invested the franchise fee. What other expenses went into it? The vehicle,
no, in my case, the franchise fee.
our expenses,
Exactly.
the
The franchise
professional fees,
fee,
the
the
legal fees.
lawyer. Yeah, the lawyer, the business plan, professional fees. That took me to enough of the committed capital that I needed to submit the visa.
Do you remember what that was? 70K, 80K, a little more?
Yeah, we were doing 70K. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
great. So you had 70K invested and then another what, 20K in the business bank account?
35.
35. Okay,
Yeah,
great.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, you tell some people it's almost too good to be true. Like you
Yeah,
can open up a business in the US, you can live here. If you're married, your spouse can work.
exactly,
That's 70K, have an extra 35, 30K for working capital, and
exactly.
you get the business going.
And that's all it took, right? And
I guess
uh,
wrapping up on the E2 side.
yeah,
So then you applied in the summer. When did you secure your E2 visa? Remind me.
I got it November, early November. I think it was November 4th. around
And
there.
then you made the move and really ramped up the business in January. Is that right?
I moved right after I got my visa, so by November 10th I was here, and and then
No more winters in Saskatchewan.
exactly, and then I started doing the grunt work of finding our physical space and setting up. Right, so then in the first week of January we were ready to open.
How long did it take to break even, where you weren't dipping into that
Yeah,
35K and you
yeah,
were
yeah.
meeting the expenses, or are you still kind of depending on the day or month,
No,
in the red and the green?
it took 3 months. It took three
3 months,
months.
that's
Yep,
solid.
3 months to break even. Yep.
Okay.
And I'll say, for me, I think it could have been faster.
Hmm.
Um,
What could have made it faster?
I had a hiccup with my Google business profile.
Okay.
And so that I was trying to validate it and it got suspended. And to get
Oh,
it
damn.
unsuspended was quite a process. It took me a month to get it unsuspended, but
And that's key, because that's the credibility and everything. You're not really a
exactly.
real business, especially if you're running a local services business. If you don't have a Google profile and you
Eh,
tie in the marketing and ad spend to that
yeah,
profile.
exactly. So had that not happened, I would have probably gotten there in 2 months, right? But because of that hiccup, it took three, which isn't the end of the world, really,
Yeah,
right? But
it's good.
my point is that's the value of the brand because I didn't
It's,
have any local ads and I got there in 3 months, right?
yeah, so they just had built up like interest where there
Exactly.
wasn't really anyone leveraging the brand for the maids in the Boca area,
Yeah,
and there's a lot of people, especially with money, that need that type of service.
exactly.
What's like the biggest type of house you served? How many bedrooms? Have you been into some pretty wild properties?
Yeah, yeah. The biggest house we have is under 10,000 square feet. It's
Wow,
eight
like
bathrooms.
it could be like a palace.
Yeah, it's eight bathrooms, 10 bedrooms. And yeah, it's beautiful.
And you go there what, bi-weekly, weekly?
Weekly, actually.
Okay.
Yeah,
And I'm sure you've only been doing this 5 months. They have friends that also have properties like that
exactly.
you continue to kick ass. They're going to tell their friends,
Exactly.
and that customer acquisition cost is quite low.
Word of mouth is awesome in this business, right? I've gotten calls from neighbors, friends, family members of clients. So yeah,
What are some mechanisms in place where to avoid, like, I imagine the value stack's really there, and I know it is, but to avoid like the homeowner being like, oh, I like these two maids, I'm going to try to hire them and poach them. Are there contracts in place? Is it a lot of value provided to the actual workers where they don't want to deal with, direct client interactions or payments and all that? What are some of the
yeah,
mechanisms to like kind of protect the business as you scale up?
yeah. We have contracts in place, for our staff, and we also have NDAs to protect our clients. Right, at the end of the day, we're going into people's homes, right? So we take their privacy seriously. But what I find is what our clients really appreciate is the professional that a service like this gives it, right? So something I keep hearing from my clients is I tried it with an independent and they said they were going to come here at 2 and at 4 p.m. I get a
This is
text
what I
saying
told you, man.
sorry I'm
Yeah.
late, right? Things like that. And so they like that, but then they also like that they have a backing of a company. So for example, if God forbid a maid comes in, scratches the stainless steel in your kitchen or damages your TV, oftentimes with an independent you don't have that assurance, whereas we're bonded, we're insured, we can make it right,
Nice.
right? And that
Well, that's
gives
important. Someone that has 8 bathrooms, they probably have some art and some pretty valuable objects where that's,
exactly,
good peace of mind.
exactly. So another thing that reassures people is staff going through background checks and things like that, right? So yeah, those are things, those is value that we create that someone down the road calling someone off Craigslist or a Facebook marketplace can't necessarily do, right? And so that differentiates us from the independents and from other companies that don't necessarily go to that length, right?
Yeah, it seems like, especially when you're in people's homes, the stakes are much higher. And I don't
Yeah.
know if you looked at any in-home care franchises, but we've had a lot of clients invest in that space, including from Canada.
Yeah.
I don't know any Ticos, anyone from Costa Rica, but it's a very sensitive type of field
Hmm.
where you have a caregiver taking care of a senior that, they're in a compromised position, whether it's physically or mentally at times. So having that corporate backing, I think, gives really peace of mind to that senior, as well as, maybe their adult child that's set up to
Exactly.
care for them.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And then what's day-to-day life like in Boca compared to Saskatchewan? Like, is
Oh
it,
gosh.
outside of business, like,
Yeah. Outside of the business, it's completely different, right? I was lucky to find an apartment right in front of the beach, so I cross the street and you're at the beach.
it's like,
I forgot what
there's a nice
winter.
beach up there. I've gone on some long bike rides from Miami Beach up to Boca, and
Yep.
there's some incredible stretches there.
Exactly. Yeah. And lots of different restaurants. There's always something going on, some sort of community event. And so I really enjoy getting outside and kind of enjoying the good weather and trying out all the new places. The area itself, South Florida, is growing a lot. And so, every day you see a new building coming up, a new restaurant. So it's exciting.
So you're happy you chose to come to South Florida instead of staying up in Canada or going back home to
Yeah.
Costa Rica.
Yeah. I'm really happy with it. I think it gives you a better lifestyle, then taxes are lower, and combined with giving you more freedom in your day to day, that's a really good recipe.
How did you decide on Boca? Did you have friends, family, or was it mostly just the business opportunity there?
I
And then obviously the lifestyle, the beach, as you mentioned.
Exactly, the lifestyle was huge, but we've been coming to Florida for years, so we've got a few other long-term rental homes in Orlando, so
Nice.
we were familiar with Florida. And then I've been coming to Miami um, as a vacation spot for quite a few years, and then I started venturing up north and exploring Fort
Well, Boca
Lauderdale.
seems like a nice medium between Orlando and Miami.
Exactly. Yeah. 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 It's not as big and chaotic as Miami can be, but you're still at the beach and it gives
Now
you.
driving anywhere in Miami is insane. I
Yeah.
always tell people I'm not, Miami is not my first choice for our clients. I love Miami, but maybe if your spouse works and he or she really needs to work in Miami and be physically present, okay, great.
Yeah.
But if not, there's a lot of amazing towns and cities in Florida as well as elsewhere in the States.
We're close enough that like you can go
You
in.
take the Bright Line, the train down, or
Exactly.
drive.
Like, you take the train 20 minutes, you're there, right? And
Yeah,
you can still, go out, have a nice dinner or do whatever and come back and,
yeah.
and you're good.
What would be your advice to other people considering the E2 visa, whether they're coming from Canada or elsewhere in the world? Any pending thoughts? I know you've already shared a lot today in our interview.
I'd say don't hesitate to do it, but make sure that you've got, everything in place to do it right. And so, and something I've heard is, for example, even in the maid system, maybe people have tried it in the past and didn't fully understand what the day to day was going to be, or, didn't fully understand the business. Take your time at the beginning. It can be very exciting, right? And you might want to feel like, let's get this done now, but take your time to really understand what you're doing. And once that's done, then go ahead and execute your plan. So the more information, the better.
And it seems like there were some parts of your background that I think really helped you scale up and continue to scale up your business. Or I'm excited to check in 12 months from now and see where you are.
Yeah.
But being fully bilingual, like what percent of your staff are you speaking Spanish with?
Oh, all of them. I speak Spanish
Yeah.
to all of them. Yeah.
So you're fully bilingual, and
Yep.
then you're fluent in English. You're probably selling what, at least half of the time you're selling in English as opposed to in Spanish.
I'm selling 100% of the time in English.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah. So you bridge both worlds,
exactly. Yeah.
and then you've managed people. It's hard to manage people.
It's hard.
You manage a huge team in Canada, and I talked to some Canadians where they're an IT consultant.
Uh huh.
They've never managed anyone, or maybe just they manage one person, and maybe you don't really want to do a business that to make good money you're going to have to scale up to significant amount of employees, or that's at least what the top performing franchisees do. Maybe you want to look at some other type of business model, not like the Maids, not like in-home care, where maybe it's just 2 employees or 3 employees over a 4 or 5 year period.
Yeah. Managing people is huge. And going through that track record, in my previous life of, different levels of management and working with very different people. It kind of teaches you also, right? How to motivate people, how to, not necessarily discipline, but coach, right? To get the outcomes that you want, right? And there's lots to that in the background that oftentimes people don't even kind of understand.
Well, Fabian, thanks so much for taking the time to sit down with me. I really appreciate it. I'm really looking forward to seeing how you continue to progress.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Fabian.
Have a good one.